so much emphasis, and it's the word of the Lord. So you have a greater role than I have, more important role than I have. And I'm always nervous, not so much here. I feel very much at home here, but I'm always very nervous out in the country. I'm speaking today, as you can see on screen, with taken part of a message I started 2 weeks ago about freedom. Freedom, very important word, isn't it? And everybody speaks about freedom, and it's in the films and it's in songs, and we don't know what it means. I remember meeting some people from Russia and the Soviet Union when they came out on what was called the Iron Curtain, and they came to France and they said, we found freedom here, but we were never able to vote before, and everybody can vote in France, but only sometimes 30% go and vote. What do you know? Why don't you appreciate your freedom? And they thought that just in one area, but we know it in many areas where freedom is misunderstood. And so I spoke 2 weeks ago about what is necessary to be free. I said that there were three things that are necessary for us to be totally free. I prepared this message in Chinese, and Richard translated all of it to English. I wish. Richard wanted me to translate this into Chinese, and I hope you can follow it. Not all of it, most of the main headings. So 2 weeks ago, I spoke about how freedom, to be totally free, to have the freedom of opportunity, where you know what God has given you to do, what you should do, you are free to do that. But then you say, like Mary was saying, I'm not sure that I can do that. So the second freedom is a freedom of ability. When God gives you the ability to do what he calls you to do. So Mary came up here, very nervous, as she said. She didn't look nervous, but she said she's nervous. And God gives the help necessary. Now, she has natural talents, she has natural abilities, but God gives spiritual ability to do what he wants us to do. But the third thing is the desire, and that's what I want to talk about today, because unless we are free in all three areas, unless you're free in your opportunities, and you have the freedom of ability to do what God calls you to do, then, and you are free in your desire, we are not free unless we have those three things. That we are not as free as Jesus intended us to be, not as free as he called us to be. And dare I say, not as free as Jesus was. Jesus said, come to me, if I make you free, you will be truly free. Truly free. That's as free as Jesus is. And that's what he wants for us. So, point one, we are fully free when we know that the opportunities for service that God gives us, ones that God wants for us. So when you are asked to do some help in something, and you say, well, I grew up, especially you from a Chinese background, you obey older people, and older people say, I would like you to do this, and you say, yes. Yes. How do you know that this is where God is calling you? Well, God will give you that freedom, the freedom of knowing which opportunities are for you. And we are fully free when we see that we can do them. We can do what God has given us. And this is very interesting. Something in Spain. God gives us same power that he knew raised Jesus from the dead. For your Ephesians chapter 2, verses 20 to 23. And if ever you say, I've said that many times, and yet no one understands. nervous. I don't think I can do that. God offers you the same power that he used to raise Jesus from the dead. Want those opportunities, but our desire is for those opportunities. Because God put his desire in us. And you sang some beautiful words, but you're saying, this is my desire. Honor you. Vote another way. This is my desire. We're fully free when we realize those opportunities which have to be said. Puts in our heart a desire to do them. And I suggest number 4. We are free, and it's confirmed when we find that there are no regrets. Mary, I'm sure you'll say, I didn't regret getting up there this morning and reading but God help you. You read the word with real clarity. No regrets. So we look at the third of those elements today. The whole freedom of ability. Because God gives us the opportunity and desire to live according to the Spirit. But if we have got no desire, set our mind on the things of the Spirit, that would be really sad. Paul said, those who identify, at first that very read last one, those who identify with the old nature, what you were before you knew Jesus, they set their minds on the things of the old nature. But if you identify with the Spirit of God in you, you'll set your mind on the things of the Spirit of God. When you come to Jesus and he said, I'll make you free, he puts a new nature. And you begin to identify with that new nature. And you no longer identify with the old nature. Remember when I went to military service, when I did some military service, I went to school, and we went to the barracks in Borough, and we were given some responsibility. I thought to just go down the road to get a coffee, to get something at the bakery. And a guy with a uniform said, what are you doing? But they're coming down to the bakery. No, you don't. You belong to the army now. We tell you what to do. We tell you when to do it. How to do it. You don't fire anything back. You are a house for this 2-week period. That's what you don't belong now out there. You belong to the army. I realized it was. They had total control of my duty, my life. Paul says that God gives us the opportunity and ability. What if we don't desire what God reads that? I'll go further to say that this is one of the main disciplines. Yes, Christian discipline is reading the Bible, is feeding yourself with the Word of God, is praying. That's a discipline of the Christian life. It's part discipline. It's part and parcel of what Jesus has called us to do. But working on our desires, I would say, is really, really important. And at the top of these disciplines of the Christian. And I think I can explain this better with an example in the Old Testament of the Passover, which is a Jewish Israel festival called the Passover, and they will be celebrating Passover around about the same time as we celebrate Easter in 2 weeks' time. So Israel celebrates the Passover, and has done their festivals. God, through Moses, led Israel out of Egypt. They captured. delivered them with mighty power. God is showing us how freedom is supposed to work out in our lives. Because God has given us this detail for us to look at it and see how does freedom work in my life? God said, well, here's an example. Here's what I see about freedom. And this example from Passover so long ago is very powerful for us today. God freed Israel from Egypt with 10 mighty power. God's power. Nothing to do with Israel. They had no capacity for it. God gave with what's called slaves, people of Egypt, and he them to turn to the land of Canaan, which he cannot give them. But once they were free from Egypt, they had a responsibility to get their desires in line with God's desires. Their desires weren't in line with God's desires. And before a person comes to know Jesus, when you can know Jesus, you can know God's desires. You know it isn't God's desires. You don't know God's desires. Then, because desires. So when they had that, their responsibility was to honor God in worship and in faith and in gratitude. Well, in the New Testament, we put it this way. Paul puts it this way in the New Testament in Romans chapter 12, when he says, well, our duty, our responsibility is to present our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God. It's a spiritual act of worship. We commit ourselves not to be conformed to the world, to our current society, mindset, values, but transformed by our renewing mind. Our mind is constantly renewed, so that we know what is God's good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. Perfect will. Now, Israel still celebrates Passover. Celebrates it with a lot of festivities. 7 days or on Passover. It's a huge festival. They don't know what Passover. They don't celebrate Passover really means. 2 weeks' time here, we will be celebrating Easter the way it should be celebrated. Special festival from God. God provided the opportunity and he provided the ability for Israel to be free from Egypt, but freedom is not complete without the desire from God. Did Israel have that? Did they want what God wanted, the desire to be free? Was their understanding of freedom the same as God's? They considered freedom from Egypt that's what it was. They found it fun. I'm sure they all wanted to be free from slave labor, free from the whips, free from all the authority of the Egyptians over there. The beatings, hardship, life. I'm sure they wanted to choose the direction for their lives for the first time. They had to choose where their life would go. I was for 2 weeks in the army. I was a slave and under responsibility of the total authority of the army those 2 weeks. But I'm sure that they wanted these things for them. I'm sure too that someone wanted a lot more. What did God want? What did God want? Well, we don't have to guess, because the Bible says God wanted them to worship Him. Worshipping God by giving themselves as living sacrifices to God. Because God calls that holy and acceptable. It's what God accepts. What God wants. It's He set us apart for that. It's holy and it's acceptable to God. And it's to be not conformed to the current world or the values of our world, as Paul says in Romans chapter 12, not conformed to this world, but transformed by the renewing of our mind. Alas, very sad. What we read is that an ongoing lack of faith would be the pattern of the life of Israel from the time they left, even from the time they got to the Red Sea, and then they crossed the Red Sea with all the wonders of that. There was an ongoing lack of faith. Sometimes they didn't grasp the opportunities that God gave them, but God showed them. Was in the desert, where was the land? Didn't grasp that opportunity. Sometimes it's because they trusted their own ability rather than trusting God's ability. And sometimes because they had contaminated, affected desires, and they couldn't enter into what God had for them. And constantly with regret, remorse, and bitterness. But because they didn't work with God, they never became totally free, and as a result, were left with deep regrets. Deep regrets. Started when they crossed the Red Sea. All that, but it's very evident when they crossed the Red Sea, because they began to grumble. They grumbled that the food they had in the desert wasn't what they had back then. They said, oh, we used to eat fish for free in Egypt. We had cucumbers, and melons, and leeks, and onions, and garlic. We want to swap the freedom for garlic. I would run. They said, they had to swap their freedom for these things. What do you tend to swap the freedom? Probably not garlic, melons, cucumbers. Maybe not. There's so far back, is it relevant to us today? Meaning for us today? Well, yes. Because if you go to the New Testament, when Paul, one of the writers of many of the letters, particularly to Romans and Galatians, he says that when you're in Christ, that's the word he uses. Hundreds of phrases he uses hundreds of times, different ways. In Christ, when you're in Jesus, when you belong to Jesus, as I belong to the army, I belong to Jesus. And when you belong to him, the new all referring back to this lesson that Israel had way back there when they were crossing the desert. The difficulties they had learning those lessons. And he points out that our freedom today is not to go back to our Egypt, what we were before, what we had. Oh, we remember Egypt, we remember the garden, we remember the leaves and the country, and God said, freedom is not going back to that. Paul says, you didn't receive a spiritual slavery when you came to God. You don't go, you don't slide back into fear. You receive a spiritual sonship. Yeah. You see, one thing to Israel to be free from Egyptian slavery, it was another thing for them to learn to be God's people. They were not a people before. Remember that verse in Mary Lord? You weren't people before. Then you had said it was easier for God to get Israel out of Egypt by his 10 mighty acts of power. It was much more difficult for God to get Egypt out of Israel. Egypt was difficult. How did God get Egypt out of Israel? That was a harder problem that God had. Moses knew if they don't get their desires right, then God will provide opportunity. Only if they get the desires right will they get the opportunities from God and the abilities from God, and they will have no regrets when things got difficult. No regrets if things got difficult. No complaints, no murmuring, because their desires have been God. And if they kept their desires attuned to God, they would be able to take up the opportunity they had. However difficult it may be, if your desire is for God, what you sang earlier, what we sang earlier, is right. He won't have any fear about taking up the opportunity. They needed God's law to change their desires. Otherwise, they would never be able to take up the opportunities that God has given them. They would never know true freedom without God. As you know, they murmured. They complained about their hardships and the attacks of the enemies along the way. That brought fear to them. There's a final thing that the writer of the Hebrews writes when he comes to examine this many years later, New Testament. They couldn't go in. They couldn't take up the opportunity. They couldn't embrace the Father. Yeah. That's tragic. Tragic. Chinese word for tragic. Thank you. Say again? Thank you. Is that bad? That's tragic. What would you say? What would you say? We say Russia, say Ukraine. So we say tragedy, tragic. This is what right Hebrews said. So it us. Cannot grasp, right? Freedom that has been given to us in Jesus. Now, 2 weeks ago, we said that I'm going back because I want to also again. God's desire in giving Israel freedom was question. God said, I'm bringing you people, freedom from slavery, freedom from control of their lives. Bringing you worship. This is important, but it must be our definition. That's what God freed us. God wanted to free the Hebrews from slavery in Egypt so that they might find their true freedom in Him, in God. A freedom to worship God as a holy people. That's the freedom. But there was something else. Something else that God said. And it's in the verse that Mary read for us. During the verse. God was delivering them so that every one of them would be a priest. Worship God. You're a priest. William? Thomas, you're a priest. Mary. God gave Israel one tribal nation, one of the 12 tribes, to be a tribe of priests. But God was teaching a lesson to Israel. They needed needed someone to come between them and God, an intermediary. They needed a priest to take their prayers to God. They needed a priest to take their sacrifice to God. God is teaching a lesson. God needs priests, needed a high priest to sacrifice to them to God. In the New Testament, we find that Jesus Christ is the priest. He is our high priest. He takes our worship to God. But he is the one who became our sacrifice to God. So in the New Testament, we don't have priests. The New Testament has some religious traditions. They have priests. The Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, they have men, and now women also who are called. And they say that they have a responsibility. We don't have that because the Bible says that we are all priests. You're a priest. You're one of them. Because you have come to faith in Jesus Christ. That's our responsibility. Now, Jesus. Now you say, what? Faith in Jesus Christ. Well, the text says, it's my team, as well. It will be my commandment, it will be my special. In fact, and you will be my kingdom of priests, my nation. That apply to us today. Well, the words in Exodus are taken up by Peter, the verse that they read. 1 Peter chapter 2. You're a chosen race, you're a royal, you're a kingdom of priests, you're a holy nation, my people, God, so that you will proclaim my mighty acts. But God called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Wow. God freed us to be a kingdom of priests at enormous cost, huge cost, the life of eternity. I will never understand how he felt what I have said. Loved him, I loved seeing him grow up, loved every bit of it. But imagine when I would go down to where my rapists and murderers are, I could say to my son, I'm going to give you up so that these people can be saved. And that's what God did. He came and saw a world of corruption and evil. And he said, my son, Jesus, who I love, and giving him sacrifice for the world. I can't even imagine what they speak of, because it's a huge, huge cost. Jesus said to us, you're being stoned, you're being built up for holy in the priesthood to offer up spiritual sacrifice to God through Jesus Christ. So that's why we don't forget the cost. That's why we spend time in a communion service like this, because we don't ever want to forget how much it costs God to give us his son. And when we then find that when we talk about God's son, when we do so, we are offering up spiritual sacrifices that are acceptable to God. Isn't that amazing? When we offer up spiritual sacrifices, it's in relation to the power of God and they're acceptable. And that was why God freed Israel. But did Israel want that? God wanted that for them, but did they want it? That's what God freed us. He wants. He wants us to have this desire. Today, he wants us to have such a desire. All of us. How does it work out? How does it work out in word ministry? How do we make this work? How do we allow this to happen here at word ministry? Because we're all royal. The first thing is that we intercede on God. If you go to someone and say, my friend can't do anything, can I please, can you help my friend? Can I pay what's necessary? You intercede on behalf of somebody. And that's the first responsibility of priests. The Greek, it means to pray for, it means to ask or to beg for something on somebody else's behalf. Intercede. And give the noun which is intercession. But as a high priest, Jesus is our supreme intercessor. He intercedes for us. Constantly on your behalf and on my behalf. He's gone to the Father and says, I pray for William, I pray for William. And I'm interceding on behalf of William and Richard and everyone. God, everyone who knows God, who knows Jesus. Jesus intercedes for you constantly before the Father. And we find this in John chapter 17 to 19, which is called Jesus' intercessory prayer, where he interceded for his disciples. He interceded for the disciples, and he interceded for us. We read in those chapters. He interceded for us, those who have believed on him. He interceded on the cross. Remember when he turned, God looked up to God and said, forgive those who don't know what they are doing. He's saying to God, don't hold them responsible for my murder, my crucifixion, because they don't know what they're doing. Jesus interceded for us, for those who didn't know. And before God in heaven, he interceded for us non-stop, while you're asleep and while you're awake. And in return, because we have received great mercy, we have a responsibility for our world, the words of God. How to do this. If you're a father, you'll be interceding for your boy, he can't listen to himself for many years to come. And you'll intercede for him. You'll intercede for your wife. Your wife will intercede on behalf. You're a grandparent. You'll intercede on behalf of your grandchildren. I can. And I do that. I will intercede on them. One of the things Paul says that we offer requests and prayers and intercession and thanksgiving to all people. You heard John put it I had in the last couple of years. Intercession for all people, for kings and all of the people in high position. We intercede on behalf of our government, on behalf of our country, on behalf of other countries. You intercede on behalf of countries that different tragedy. We intercede on behalf of God's servants in these countries. Our missionary friends. We have 3 mission units, Monica and people are working for Afghanistan, people in Salvador, and doing and we intercede for them. And we intercede on behalf of our neighbors, for them to be safe. I intercede on behalf of my neighbor, who I have quite a good relationship with, but he's not ready to get Jesus Christ. And one search everyone's heart knows the mind of the Spirit. I don't find anybody that says, I don't sense it. No, I see people and I'm thinking of something older. I know you would see you don't normally answer my question. That's not a question you have to answer. But who I would see on behalf of that's the goal. There's another one. Another role. We're all priests. The role is to offer our praise and thanks to God. The right Hebrews writes, our responsibility to offer our sacrifice and praise to God because without it, it's coming from our mouths and acknowledging the name of God. Once a week, Sundays, not just Sundays, also for when we're not together. And it's also for our daily occupation. We all the time, all the time. My neighbour told me he was having a party yesterday afternoon for grandchildren. He said, "Oh, it's going to be bad." I said, "Well, have you asked the Almighty?" "No." I said, "Don't you have a relationship with the Almighty?" "No, no longer." I said, "What did you do?" "No, never." I said, "Well, I do. I will ask God for a weather for you afternoon, yesterday afternoon, and hoping that something will touch him, and he knows that I'm interested in God." But Thanksgiving is a wonderful way to honor God. You know, the Christians have a wonderful thing, because we are grateful that someone. I see people are grateful, but they don't. Some of you remember the song with Emma? Anyone remember? Yeah. Oh, shows your age. Emma? You remember the song that they sang? "Thank you for the music." Thank you for the music. For the music. On Sunday, they know because they know we have someone we can thank. People around me say, Mother Nature, you know, she heard you. You know, can you talk about it? Like the gods that I grew up around in India, they are wood and stone, and they pray to be don't know it, don't know it, they can answer it. People who don't know God, and they enjoy a sunset there. Thirdly, we have to meet some acts of service for us. What God has done for us and we can do for us. Our attitude for Christ has done, finds us service to God. We actually become slaves to other people. God has freed us for it. We serve others freely and joyfully. Don't go home saying, I don't know how this is. All those hours spent freely, joyfully, forgiven. Yourself. He gives you the desires. Please, he gives you that is because he wants something good in China is lavish. What's lavish in China? What's lavish? Not up there, lavish. So abundance. And the next is the boy. See that popular volley sweets? Excellent. Is it? Isn't it? There you go. There's some for you. Why did you? Because I know your hand is bigger than mine. Bigger than ours. He gives you the ability to obey him. Walk in the Spirit. He gives you opportunity day by day to say no to sin and selfishness, and to serve God and others in love. And fourthly, as you live in this freedom, now and forever, you'll have no regrets that God called you. No regrets. All situations. You're called to freedom, brothers. Just don't use freedom